الآن يمكنكم المشاركة في مبادرة الأيام الرقمية تحت شعار انطلق بقوة مع جوجل، والتي يتناول فيها خبراء جوجل عناوين جديدة أسبوعيا مثل السحابيات، مهارات من جوجل، أندرويد، فلتر، ذكاء الآلة، فايربيس، ديزاين ثينكينج، مقسمة إلى دورات وورشات عمل يومية بالإضافة إلى مسابقات أسبوعية. شاهد الأيام الرقمية مباشرة على اليوتيوب وشارك رأيك وأسئلتك مع خبراء جوجل، واحصل على شهادة حضور في كل محاضرة تشترك فيها. هذا وأكثر من الأحد إلى الخميس ابتداء من الساعة 9 بتوقيت دبي عبر الرابط المبين youtube.com/gdgmena.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. أهلا بكم في عدد جديد من MENA ديجيتال دايز، الأيام الرقمية، أين نتناول الكثير من الأشياء، الكثير من التكنولوجيات الحديثة. معكم عليان عبد النور، جي تي وزوال الجزائر، وسأكون بإذن الله معكم في هذا العدد الذي يتناول موضوع جوجل كلاود، وخاصة كومبيوت انجن. سأقوم بشرح الأساسيات، وسنقوم بإذن الله مع بعض بإنشاء موقع ويب سيت بحيث أنه سيعمل كما نعرف. الويب سيت سوف لن يكون مشروع كبير، لكن كل شيء يبدأ بالأساسيات. العدد سيكون بالإنجليزي، لكن هناك أعداد أخرى، وستكون بإذن الله أعداد أخرى في المستقبل بالعربي. القناة لمن لا يعرفها هذه هي youtube.com/gdgmena، أين ستجدون الكثير من topics بالعربي، بالإنجليزي، وحتى بالفرنسي. ويمكنكم البحث هنا. مثلا لو أعمل مثلا جيت، مثلا سنحتاج إلى جيت، ستشاهدون أنه هناك أعداد خاصة بالموضوع. يعني في هذه القناة طبعا هي مجانية، ويمكنكم التعلم وتعلم الكثير من الأشياء، ويمكنكم تعلم أشياء توجد في مناطق أخرى وبالمال، لكن هنا كل شيء مجاني. فنبدأ على بركة الله. طبعا سأقوم بلايف كودين، سأعمل بعض الأشياء البيزكس، لكن سأقوم بشرحها. وإذا كانت لديكم أي أسئلة يمكنكم طرحها علي، وسنقوم بالإجابة بإذن الله. Hello everyone, welcome to this session. This session is part of MENA Digital Days, where we are going to learn a lot of things about cloud, about AI, about general topics, general computer topics. I will be with you within 1 hour, where we are going to explore and to discover new things about cloud on Google Cloud. So let's start. So this, and of course, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them. As you can see now, this is the interface of Google Cloud. Everything is in the left menu. So what we are going to need, we need compute engine. But before we talk about compute engine, let me draw something. So let me take a tablet so I can draw. Okay, let me switch here. So when you hear about cloud, generally we hear about three concepts, general concepts. So let me draw 3 layers. The first layer, we call it IaaS. And then the second layer, we call it PaaS. And then the last layer, we call it SaaS. What does it mean? The first one, this is the infrastructure as a service. So the infrastructure as a service, that means that I give you like a machine with only the operating system, and then you do everything. We need this when we like to do all the stuff by ourselves. And then we have the platform as a service, which means that we install, for example, PHP or Python, and then we tell you, okay, now you have everything installed, now you just need to program. But if you need to update the operating system, you cannot. If you need, for example, to install a firewall, you cannot. To do this, you need the infrastructure, which means that we give you the liberty to do everything. And then in the platform as a service, that means that you don't care about firewalls, you don't care about operating system, everything is updated by the service. What you need is just programming. And then we have the software as a service, which means that this is the software. This is like the upper layer. For example, the Google Docs and Google Slides are softwares, which means we don't program, even if we write some scripts on them, but we didn't program how Google Docs work. They are software. And when we talk about software, we talk about something that our client don't need to understand deeply. So the more we go deeper, the more we need experts. So I preferred today to show you something about infrastructure, but there are other tutorials about platform. For example, Google, here, for example, we have the App Engine. The App Engine is a solution where we don't care about operating system. We just program in Python or we program in PHP, and the solution is here. But in infrastructure, we take control about everything. And if you need to take control about everything or your team are experts, the best solution is infrastructure as a service. But there is another way, is that if you want to invest, you just take the infrastructure as a service and you create your own platform as a service. People will pay you for the platform and you gain money from the infrastructure. And you can take the platform as a service and make a software and make people pay you for a software as a service. For example, let's say Nginx, which is a tool to get what's going on your hardware, which is a software. You want to deploy it on internet and make your clients pay for only for Nginx. They don't pay you for the platform. They only use the software. And we are going to see a lot of examples about this. So today we are going to talk about infrastructure as a service and the solution this on Google Cloud that's called Compute Engine. The Compute Engine is the solution that Google offered for us to manage the firewall, to manage the operating system, to take control about everything. So let's go back and let's start. And here is the products. So they start from here. So what happened is that I pinned, because you can pin any service to be directly here. So the service that Google Cloud offers, they are divided on resources, they are divided on storage, databases, and everything you need, machine learning. And of course, we cannot do all those products in one session. There are a lot of sessions, I repeat, in the channel where you can get every topic has its own video in Arabic, in English, in every language you want. So let's go and create our first virtual machine. Let's go to Compute Engine, which is the IaaS. And as you can see, we are going to build it from scratch. So I deleted everything. I just let it's like an empty project. And by the way, there are two ways to use Google Cloud. There is a way where Google offers $300 in 3 months. They are free. You just need a credit card to prove that you are a human, not a bot. And then there is another way that we are going to share later, which is called Quick Labs. Quick Labs is the platform, is the e-learning platform for Google Cloud. So right now I'm using the 3 months, 3 free months with $300 where I can train and see what's going on. And the example that I'm going to use now, it's the free tier. Free tier is this. Let me show this. Free tier Google Cloud. So if I type this, I get a free. What is a free tier? You need to understand that. Let me draw you something. Let's delete this. And I show you something. So in Google Cloud, they offer services. And then there are other services. So this is the $300 that lasts 3 months or 90 days. And then you have the free tier. So the free tier and the $300 are completely independent, which means that the free tier, you will use it forever. Of course, until Google change this, but you can, even if those $300 and 90 days are over, you will still use the free tier. What happens when you use the free tiers? The free tiers is this. We go here. So if you choose the compute engine, when we say the free tiers, that means that we are going to use a machine that must be F1 micro. This is the type that we need to use. We can use up to 30 gigabytes of HDD and not SSD. Yeah? And then we need to use one of those regions if we want to use snapshots. And be careful about one thing, is that the traffic that you send from your virtual machine is important. So that's what we call an egress. We have the ingress. So let me draw this. So let's delete this. So if we have our virtual machine here, so everything that goes from our virtual machine, that's called egress. And everything that we receive, we call it ingress. So we need to keep an eye on what goes from our machines, which means that if we are hosting pictures, we need to be careful, because if we are hosting pictures and people will see those pictures, that means that we are sharing the bandwidth in egress mode, and in the free tier, we must not go beyond 1 gigabyte of egress traffic. And of course, there is an old video where I explained all those things and how much it costs a project on GCP. This is what we call a free tier, which lasts forever until Google decides to stop this offer. But right now, you just go for the free tier, and the example that I'm going to use is using the free tier. So I come here, and then I tell him, okay, I want to create an instance. And in the instance, it gives me all types of machines, from the simplest one to the most complicated one. Let me show you here. So I will zoom a little bit. I hope like this it's clear. Let's call it my server, or for example, my website. That would be better. My first website. And then let's choose a region. Those regions are the ones that are used in the free tier. So be careful. You cannot host in Europe, because in Europe they have their way to tax things, but in USA they have other ways. You need to understand that in the cloud is cheaper in USA, but expensive in Europe, because in Europe there are many laws. So I will choose those regions, and then in the type of machine, as you can see, the E2, I can go until 32 vCPU and 30 gigabyte of memory. But you need to understand that if I go to, for example, N2, I can have other machines. Check this one, for example. I have 80 vCPU with 320 gigabyte of memory. You need to understand that the more you use stronger machines, the more you are going to pay, because the concept of the cloud works with pay as you go, which means that you have a lot of money, that's fine, but you want to use a machine for just 1 hour, that's fine. What you're gonna do, you come here and, for example, we say calculator Google Cloud. So if I come here, I will get, of course, this one too I talked about in last session. So with this, you have all the Google services, and let me zoom here to get the link. You just type Google Cloud Calculator, and then it gives you to this website. So it takes, sorry for my connection, because I opted for a connection that is better for upload than download, so you can hear me better. So waiting for this to load, let's go back here. And then, of course, we are going to use the free tier. And in the free tier, let me choose the old generation, the N1, and come here and use the F1 micro, which means that this machine is free forever. You don't get, you get $0 for this, even after the 3 months and the 90 days. And now, let's reduce this, don't need it. So remember, this is the machine that you don't pay for it. If you use another machine, you are going to pay for the 3 first months from the $90, which means, let me come back here. Here is the concept. The concept is easy. We just subscribed for this offer, which means that we have $300 for 90 days. So every time we use something which is not a free tier, we are going to consume from this until we get $0, and then we get our offer stop. That's why better to opt for the free tier 2 solutions. You get one solution which costs money, and then you get another solution for the free tier. So like this, even if you get $0 at the end, or you go beyond 90 days, you still have the free tier. That's the trick. So just go for the free tier first, and then those $300, use them to train how the cloud works. So I choose this machine, and then here, let me change the operating system. And here, you need to understand that the free tiers is using the Linux distribution and not any kind of Linux. For example, Red Hat isn't a free Linux, which means that you need to pay. So you have Red Hat and Windows, they are not from the free tier. Remember this, because the operating system, you need to pay for it. And you don't need personally to pay for Windows. It's Google pays for that. So when you pay everything, Google takes care about those fees. So let me choose Ubuntu, and then let's choose the latest LTS one. So this is just the operating system. And here we have in the free tier, let me come here and let's see how much disk I can go. I can go up to 30 gigabyte of disk. That's fine. Let me choose here 30 gigabyte, and we are done. So click this, and since this is a website, I need to access using HTTP and HTTPS, I need to check them both, because there is another setting that we are going to see later, which concerns only the firewall. But this is made for people who don't want to break their heads learning what is a firewall. You just check those two, and you don't need to go to the firewall. But if you want to do something complicated, you go to firewall, and then we are going to the firewall later. Now, let's bring this here. And let's come to disks. Always uncheck this. Why? Because in case I need to delete my machine, my work will not be deleted. My disk, because how the cloud works, I already talked about this long ago, is that we don't have a direct attached storage. We talked about DAS and NAS. The DAS, which means that it's direct, for example, the hard disk, the USB disk, but the NAS, which means the network attached storage, which means that we have already our machine, but the disks are external from these machines, which means that we can attach a disk using a network. And of course, this is a fiber optic way to make it the data travels fast. So you just need to check about the NAS. So Google use a NAS to attach disks. There are disks here, and they are attached to different machines. So in case we lose the machine, we don't lose the disk. So always remember, when we choose a disk, that's a personal choice, but I advise you to do that. So don't delete the boot disk, because maybe we need it for another disk. And then we come to the network, and here there is a configuration. Every time we create a project in Google Cloud, there is a pre-configured network. So now let me go to the network, and this is what we call the VPC network, for virtual private cloud. So we already know what is a VPN, virtual private network. A VPC, this is for virtual private cloud. So virtual private cloud, this is it. We have networks with regions. As you can see, those networks are private, those addresses. For people who come from Cisco, and we already talked about this, when an address starts with 10 and then /8, here we don't need really /8. So we only need /20 for CEDR. So every region has its own network, but we can create our own VPC. So let's use the default one, and then later we will see this setting. So let's go back here. We are going to use our default network. We don't need to create one. So if we click on this pen, as you can see, we have every machine has internal IP and external IP. Internal IP, for example, right now in my laptop, I'm using an internal IP to connect to my router, but from my router to outside, I need to use an external IP to be visible on internet. So if I come to external IP, I have none. So in case I use none, that means that I am protecting my machine from getting attacked from internet. I just need a machine, but I don't want to be available directly. There are ways to make it available, but not directly. I can use ephemeral, which means that if I restart my machine, I get a new IP. don't use ephemeral. I need now to use a fixed IP. How that is working is if I come here, we choose external IP, always reserve an address for you. Don't make the system affect an ephemeral IP. Why? Because we will see in a few minutes we need it in the DNS. So what we do, we just click in reserve static and wait. And here you need to understand that there are two ways that Google has its own network. There is the standard tier, which means that we are using the public internet, and then we have the premium network, which means that we are going to use the Google's network. I already talked about this in how networking works. And then we need, and this one is a little bit expensive than the standard one. We are using the IPv4, the old one. We choose the region, that's fine. Everything is fine. And then we do reserve. I need to name it. For example, my future website. And then click reserve. What happens is that now I ask Google to never give this address for someone else. This is mine. That's why it's expensive when you reserve without affecting it to a machine, because right now I didn't affect it for a machine. And how we are going to do how much it costs, we just come here to the calculator earlier I talked about, and then if I come here, as you can see, they are all the services. You can measure how much it costs. So if I come, for example, to the network, to the egress, as you can see, in the premium, every region has its own price. But if we use the normal network, we are going to use the internet, which doesn't cost a lot. So if I come here, compute engine, which are going to use number of instance, I am using only one, and we are using a free operating system, not Windows or Red Hat, and the machine class. We are not using a preemptible. I talked about the preemptible. Preemptible are those machines that if you they last for a maximum 1 hour, and then the type we use the N1, and we use the free one, micro. So as you can see, GPU isn't available here because it's a free tier. And here, the instance using the public static. We need to use only one static IP, and then let's include the always free estimate. And this costs, as you can see, $0 for a month. So this is the free tier. So the more you reserve IP address, the more you pay them, but one, that's fine. So let me delete this. I don't need it. Okay, so okay, release. Because I am going to use this one, because I have already configured DNS, which I'm going to talk about it in a few minutes. And then I reserved my IP address, and I come here and I tell him, okay, I need an external IP, which is this. So what I did, instead of letting Google affecting a new IP address, I created a new IP address and I reserved it for my machine. Why? Let me explain this with drawing. We have what we call a DNS. So a DNS is for domain name. The domain name service is to say google.com. Computers don't know what means google.com. They know numbers. which is what we call IPv4 or IPv6. But in the past and now we are using IPv4, which is the most used one. So what happens if we reserve the IP and we already affected it to our domain name? Next time that we delete a machine and create another machine, we don't need to do that again. So we already did the DNS. We don't need to reconfigure this. That's why I told you reserve an address for you. So next time if you delete a machine, you don't need to do the whole thing, because this operation can cost 24 hours to propagate, because in the world there is one server and then there are other servers in the world, so it needs to go and propagate this information that this address means google.com and google.com means this address. So that's why we need to reserve an address to not repeat ourselves. I did everything and we click done and we create, and that's it. I just created a new machine with a fixed IP address and with HTTP and HTTPS port open in the firewall. Now I just need to access to this website, and here let it create. Now we need to reserve a domain name for ourselves. To this, we just type Registrar Google. Registrar Google, which is the Google domain registrar, because to reserve a domain name, you need to pay for it. And how much it costs? It costs by a year. So you just pay for 1 year. So I come here. This is the interface. I just reserved this domain name .com. I come to DNS here, and then I use Google domain name server, and check this. I told him www.thename.com. That is the same IP address I already reserved here, 9912. 9912. So every time someone types this name, it goes here. And we need to do another operation. This operation is useful in case someone, let me zoom. This operation, because some people type www dot something, and some people forget to type the www. This is not the same, because this is a subdomain. We call it a subdomain. So what we need to tell the server that if someone types with the www, I need him to redirect to this website. So we need to do an operation to redirect people who typed it without the www. That's fine. Who didn't type it? Who typed the www? I need him to redirect to this. So if I reserve this, I just invert the procedure, and then this is the records. So the A, for people who want to understand more, you just click on this and come here, and it will give you a tutorial. So the A for address. So every time we reserve www.something.com or .fr or .bz or .net, we are calling this an A record. If we are using an email, we are using the MX. But sometimes we need what we call a text. This is like random information where we need to prove that we own this website. So in case of this, we use txt. And there is something more. Once we do this, we wait for like 24-hour maximum, but sometimes it takes less. So this, I am telling the internet that if someone types www. For example, isigno.com, I need him to bring me to this IP address, which is my server. I hope you understand this. Later I will answer for questions if there are any. And then we come to email. That's this step. A lot of people forget it, even if it's free. in this way, we are going to configure, instead of using my own email, I'm telling the server that if someone uses this address, I can name it whatever I can do. It will redirect me to this email. This is like much more professional than using your own address. No one knows that I'm using this. Everyone knows this one that you are going to give for professionals. And this is much more professional to give this than this. But at the end, you will just receive an email on your regular email. So you just need to configure everything and you wait for like maximum 24 hours and that's fine. Now I come here. Let me access now to my machine to install all the stuff we need. And SSH, so waiting this to complete loading. What is SSH? This is called secure shell. Secure shell is that I have a server, but there is a problem. I don't have a screen. And then I don't have a keyboard because this is a regular computer, nothing else. So what happens is that if I delete this and I delete this, what I do, I place a network here and I place a second machine and I access in a way that if I send a command here, I will execute it and then it brings me back a result. This is like a distant screen. And because the command can be hacked in the middle, I need to crypt those commands in a secure way. So this is a secure shell. So this is SSH. And the old way is using Telnet. Telnet, we are using the data in clear text. They are not crypted. But in secure shell, we are using a much more secured way. So here, now the machine is ready. Right now, I'm in my new created machine. So if I do sudo apt update, because this is like a new installed machine, I need to update it and install new stuff. What I need right now, I need to install the web server, which is Nginx. I tell you why in a few minutes. And I do sudo apt install Nginx. Okay, I say yes. So in Ubuntu, every time you have like a capital letter, which means that this is the default value. You don't need to type it again. So here, as you can see, the connection is so fast because I'm not using my own connection. Here, the machine is using Google's connection. And this is ingress traffic. This is not egress. Ingress, I'm downloading to my machine. I'm not downloading for people. So I don't pay for this. Okay. And since Nginx has been installed, let's check if it's running or not. So sudo systemctl. Okay, status Nginx. Is it running? Yes, it's running. So what I need now, I need to check for the website. I just click here, and since it's a web server, I should have my first. Come on, Nginx, what's going on? This is. So what's going on? It's working. Okay. Yeah, here it says it's working. Why the website doesn't work? Firewall is open. Okay. So let me restart it. So if I do start, is off. Problems status. So Nginx is working. Let's reload. And let's check why. Here is the problem. As you can see, by default, we are in 2021. That's why the behavior of this browser is going to HTTPS. It is not going to HTTP. So if I type HTTP, that works. But in HTTP, this is not a secure website. And there are even some websites, like in Google Chrome, it will block you because it will warn you to tell you, hey, you are using a website that is not secure, because we are in 2021. So here we have two solutions. Either we go and pay for a certificate to use HTTPS, but thanks to some people, they created a new project which is called Let's Encrypt. And Let's Encrypt, that gives you a free certificate that renews itself every time, but you need to configure a lot of stuff. And then there are other people who even made it easier. So they took Let's Encrypt, this is the website, and then they did something called CertBot. So in CertBot is the Let's Encrypt, but with much more, which is much more easier. So let me zoom. What happens if you go to CertBot? This is the website, and let me come here. You just come to CertBot instruction here, and then you choose, let me come here. You choose the software. Since we installed Nginx, we didn't install Apache. Nginx, and then the operating system, we need Ubuntu. This one. That's what we did earlier, and that's fine. And that's it. And then we follow the instruction. And here are the instructions. There are like 6 instructions or 7. And the 8th one, this is just to test. As you can see, that's really easy. So let's follow the instruction. But before we follow the instruction, CertBot don't work with IP address. It needs a domain name. And earlier we created the domain name. So let me check this. It's in the cache. That's why I got this, because I deleted the machine and it's still in the cache. I just deleted, so I'm sorry for this. So let me come here. Okay, let me wait. Now I don't want the HTTPS. Now the redirection always forces the HTTPS. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm waiting. I will first install this. We just take this and copy and paste. That's it. So in the virtual machine, let me install this. As you can see, I'm using like 37 megabytes per second, which is really good. And then let's copy this. This is just a copy paste, nothing special. And then I take this. As you can see, I'm not using my own connection. I'm using the Google's one. And since it's ingress connection, I'm not paying for this. Installed. And then we create a symbolic link. Those are just simple Ubuntu commands. And then create that. Okay. And email address. Why it needs my email to renew. Let me this and okay. And do you agree? Yes. Those are just. Would you willing once first to share our email? We say no. And it tells me, gives me now your domain name. So let me give him domain name we just bought. And it will request now. Everything will be done. Successfully deployed, everything is done, and that's fine. We just create a website that works on HTTPS. Let me try now. See, now it works. Why? I just generated a certificate, a free one, for $0, and it gives me the Nginx. To prove you that this is my website, let me come here. Let me change the website. So if I do sudo nano var, sorry, this is where Nginx stores this page, www, this, and this. Let me, I don't have nano. Okay, that's fine. Let me install it. Sudo apt install nano. I hate using vi. That's why I will not use it now. Vi is complicated. I have to use, we are like 101. So let me repeat. I'm using the arrows. So let me delete everything. And let me write here something like welcome. Welcome in a base. I will save it. I don't need to restart anything because it's an HTML. And now if I refresh, see, now I have a website that works and a professional domain name. And because we are not going to only stop here, we still have time. Let me show you another thing, how professional works. In Google, we don't, in Google Cloud, there is a solution which is called source repositories. This is the equivalent of GitHub. So for GitHub and Git, please come here and see all the videos. So you just come here and type Git, and then you will have professional videos explained in Arabic, in English, in whatever you want, which are special dedicated for Git. But just an image, what is a Git? Here is it. So a Git, have a file, and then we want to save it. What we're going to do? We say this is file.txt, and then we don't want to use this. So we are doing, we create a copy, we name it f.f1, and then we create another copy, and we call it f2, and then we have a lot of version. So what we do, what if we use only one file where we can have all those traces, f1 and f2? And not only this, but who did this and when he did this. So for the collaborative way, because a lot of people are working in team, we need to understand who did this, who created the modification, and when he created the modification. So with Git, we are answering the question what, when, and who. And we can have the traces. And the Git is based on, oops, sorry. So the Git, do this. The Git is based on branching, which means that this is the time. And then what we do, we create branches to create copies that we can work on it. And then we can decide to update the original one or do the inverse. And we are going to use some commands and then you will understand. So for this, let me come here. This is a blank project. We click on get started, create a repository. And by the way, this is in free tier. You don't need to pay for it. So if I come here and then I cut to cloud repo, so in free tier, I have like App Engine, Artifact, AutoML, Cloud Billing, Natural, Cloud Run, Cloud Shell. Here is it. I can use collaborate up to 5 users, and I have 50 gigabyte of storage, and I have 50 gigabyte egress, the traffic that comes from the server to me. That's why it's not 1 gigabyte, because I will commit a lot. I will copy the source code on my machine. So I come here and here, create a new repository or connect external for people who already used GitHub. But me, I want to create a new one. I create continue. The repository name, I want to call it my website. And then the project, we choose the project, we initialize it in Google Cloud, and then we do create. Nothing easier. So now we need then to install Git on our local machine if we use Linux. If we use Windows, I advise you to use cmdir. Cmdir is, so if I come here, Commander is the tool that brings all what you need. This is like you will work like you are in Cygwin. This is like you are in Linux, but you are in Windows. And it works on Windows 7, even if you don't have Windows 10. So here, I will come here and I copy this. Let me copy this, and you will see what happens. So it asks me to add its website to the trusted websites, but here I am. I have an error. Why do I have an error? Because I need to register a certificate to trust my machine. To do this, let me make it. Where is the options? Settings and fonts. Sorry, just a few minutes. And size, let me use something like 34. Okay, I hope it's clear. So what we need to do SSH Cajun. SSH Cajun, you can use this tool or you can use the PuTTY. For people, I think you know PuTTY. And PuTTY is not only this tool, it has also the SSH Cajun. What happens when I use SSH Cajun? It will generate a private and public key. It will be stored in your user folder, even if in Linux or Windows. I say yes, make it empty. I don't need to crypt things. And here I am. I just generated a key. If I do cd SSH, and then I do ls, repeat this, this is a private key. Never ever show your private key. This is a public key. So we need to share the content of this public key. And the known hosts are the website I just connected to. So I just do cut id rsa dot, and I copy all this. So let me copy it. Let me come back here and let me click here, register the SSH key, and here, let me cut the sound just. Sorry. So why did it ask me again for a password? Because just it needs that. It needs to confirm that it's me, not someone else. So let me call it Dell, the name of the machine, Windows 10. Okay, thank you. We can add 10 other minutes. That's perfect. Let me test it. It must start always with this to control. And then register. And I just registered a new machine. Now if I do cd and I do now git clone, as you can see, now it cloned, but it says, it seems that you have an empty. That's fine. That's my objective. So let me go now, cd my website, and then here I'm in the master. So always we work on the master. So what I draw, this line, it's called master. And all the others, it's up to us to give it a name. So we always work on the master, which is the latest one. So if I come here where I was, okay, here. Let me do touch index.html. And if I do ls, I have an index.html. Now what I do, you go to your favorite editor and let me come here. So this is it, and users. Okay. And users, and go to Dell and my websites. Now, if I just opened the folder, now here is my index.html, and then I can write something like, okay, let me generate. This is like VS Code. Those are just shortcuts. You just type exclamation mark and then tabulation, and then let me h1, and then hello there. This is my first website. And we save it. And then if we come here, we are working here. So what we do, we type this command, git, and then we decide what we do. The git is the initial command, and then we have the argument. So if we do git status, it says that you just created the new file, but you didn't added it. So git, it has two steps, staging and committing phase. So to do stage, I need to add it first. So I do git add dot. Dot means add everything, to not break our head naming every file. And then we do git commit, and then dot m to tell him some message. Hello world, something like it's the first commit. And then we do git push, and that's it. Those things are the one that keeps repeating again and again and again. So if I come now here and then check the repository, as you can see, now I have my index and I have hello there. And then I take this website and I copy it to my virtual machine using the command which is called SCP for secure copy. How are you going to use SCP? I take SCP file and then I give it the IP address. So let me come back to the website. This is my IP address, and let me copy here. And then we take, we don't write directly like this. We use this, and then we give it the path. And here I need the name of the user. So who am I? So because there is a problem with sudo. So I need to copy it to my own directory. Yes. Then it gets copied. Lost connection. Here is a problem. I need to confirm just this problem that you need to change if you want to access to your machine. If you do SSH and then the name, arrobas, you notice one thing. You cannot access to your machine using SSH. Why? Because it's protected. So what you need to do is to configure one setting, etc SSH and SSHD. This file, let me repeat this operation. This file is for the daemon, for the server. And then if you come here, where is it? or let me search. Where is the password? In authentication. In the password, there is a problem, is that it's no, which means that you cannot access from another machine other than GCP, other than password authentication. You need to change it to yes, because right now it's using a Google solution. But right now, if I do yes, I save it, and I restart the daemon, systemctl, restart, SSH. Now, if I try to SSH again, it gives me the access, because I told him, okay, I need to access. And the second one, since I didn't initialize the password, I will never access. So I need to come back to my machine and type sudo passwd and the user. And it gives me new password. There is no password for this user. So if I type abcd, now if I here, and it asks me to log in, I type abcd, and I'm inside the machine. Now I'm inside the machine. This is like I'm using this console. So you need to configure SSH, you need to affect a new password for the user, and you need something else. Here in the machine, I cannot do sudo from SSH. So I need to affect this user to the sudoers, to the super users. To do this, I just need to do user mode. I need to modify this user dot ag capital letter, and then the group, which is called sudo on Red Hat. You need the group, or CentOS, which is that you need wheel, and then the user. So I need to append this user to the group, which is called sudoers. So if I type groups and then this user, you can see I have this group, and now I can type the sudo commands. So if I exit and repeat the SCP, now it should work. SCP, you need SSH because it uses the SSH. So abcd. Why? Okay, it seems that we have some permission bugs. Anyway, those things are going to solve them, but what you need to understand is to reserve the domain name here. Once you reserve it, you fix your IP address. Once you fix the IP address, you affect it to the domain name, and then don't make the IP address ephemeral, and then create a new SSH, and that's it. So let me check if you have any questions. Forgot. Why I said Nginx? Because Nginx, we are not going to use it as a web server, but as a proxy, which means that a lot of people are using Node.js. Never expose your Node.js application to the public, which means that you have the Nginx here. So for security reason, people will come to Nginx, and then behind you will have your Node.js or your Python application, which will use proxy. So the Nginx will serve as a proxy, but your application will be protected behind. So for this, you just search for how to create a proxy. And the good thing about this is that you can host a lot of application in Node.js and use it as a load balancer using the proxy way. So let me check your questions, if there are any. Okay, so Okay. So any question? So do you have any questions? By the way, if you want to train on Google Cloud, you just use Quick Labs. Quick Labs is a platform where you can train directly. So if I type Quick Labs, this is the platform, and it's a paid platform. But in the sessions, there is always a way to make it free. So you will have one free month, and then you can even have 2 months if you do the quests. So it has everything about Google Cloud. So this is the official e-learning platform for Google Cloud. You can explore all the products and all the service Google offers. And we will have other sessions where we can have advanced ways. So if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you. We are here to make those kind of great sessions. Our objective is to spread the knowledge so everyone can understand at least one thing. So if there are no questions, and let me add 5 minutes so I can show you one thing, one important thing in security. So when you finish a website, Google gives a special tool. If I come here in I am an admin, let me click on it. I will show you one thing which is important. There is a free way to make you test your website for security vulnerabilities. So if I come here, okay, so where is it? Oh, so I am, and so Cloud IAP. Cloud IAP, we will see that later in other session where you can protect your website in a way that even someone hacks you, it can access to it because it will be locked. So if I come here, I have this web security scanner. In web security scanner, this is a tool that makes you scan your website for different vulnerabilities. So if I do new scan and leave everything by default, and then I put my website, which is https://.com, and then the IP, you can choose whether the IP or the DNS as you want. And there is no authentication because there's no login. You need to provide it. And then if I do show more, you can even change your browser, your user agent, or user agent, and then do save. It will take a time because it will scan your website for all vulnerabilities. It gets updated. And then if I do run scan, it will scan this website. It will take time, but you just wait for it until you get the result. And here, as you can see, it will give you all the vulnerabilities found. Last thing, it will take maximum 5 minutes, is that in case there are many people who don't use SSH on port 22 because it's like a security vulnerability. So generally, we change the port 22 to something else. What we do, we come here, etc, SSH, and SSHD. SSHD config. We come to port 22. It's commented because it's default. And then, for example, we change it to something like 2055. No one can guess that it's 2055. unless someone has like tools that scan port. But we always suppose that it doesn't have this. Save it. And then if I restart my SSH and try connect now, it will reject me because it is not 22 anymore. So if I do SSH, something like that, let me delete this, leave, it will reject because by default it goes to 22. So the way to do this is to click here and open in browser window on custom port. If I do this, it will ask me which port now I am going to use. So I tell him this is the port. But this is not what is important. What is important is how we are going to configure this on the network. So here is the trick. This is an easy trick. So if I come to firewall, since I'm not using the 22 anymore, I can delete it. That's fine, because I don't use 22 anymore. I come here and I delete the rule that makes 22 open. What I do, I create a new rule here and then type it new SSH port. And in the network, I'm going to affect it to the default that I just created. Priority. Smaller number means that it's more like bigger numbers, less priority, small numbers, bigger priority. Ingress, because I need traffic that comes to my machine and I need to allow this machine. So the target tag HTTP server, because every time we create a network, we affect tags to make it easier. So I already created this tag HTTP server, and then there is another one which is HTTPS server, because when you host a lot of servers, you need to tag them. And then specified protocol, we need the TCP with 2055. And now if we do create, where is, make sure all fields are correct. What did I just forget? Oh, the range, sorry, I needed to make it public, which is 000/0. That means that this is internet traffic. I don't want to lock it to some IP address. And if I do create, what happens? I just opened a port on my machine, which is 2055, without using the Linux tool. I just use an external tool, which is the firewall and GCP firewall that replicates the setting on this machine. So next time, if I want to access, as you can see, I didn't use it 2055. If I come here, I will just do this and then we're done. So if I come here, and if I come to Compute Engine, I will tell him, no, I don't want SSH by default. On custom port, 2055, open. Now, how I'm going to do this on this machine, on my own machine, is to do SSH. So instead of using something like that, we use the argument -p 2055. And since the port is open, it should allow me to access. So ABCD. Okay, I'm in. I'm in this machine, but if I use the default, which is the port 22, if a hacker, for example, tries to use the default port, it gets rejected because this is not the port I'm using anymore. SSH doesn't listen on 22, but it listens on 2055. And that's it. Are there any questions? If there is no question, thank you very much for being here. See you in next session بإذن الله.